Sunshine on a Saturday in Columbus, Ohio for the Scarlet and Gray spring game. Ohio Stadium, we're in the shoe as we get a look at Urban Meyer's team for 2014 after such great success the last two seasons. It is spring football on the Big Ten Network. So glad you joined us this afternoon. Tom Wormy along with former assistant coach and player here at Ohio State, Glenn Mason. And Glenn, this atmosphere is incredible. We crank up the spring with the Scarlet and Gray game, but so much to look forward to based on what Ohio State has done the last 2 years here in Columbus.
Tom, every place in the country it's spring football time, but in Columbus, Ohio, it's always college football season. And, you know, I spent the entire day around that Ohio State football program. I really enjoy myself. I felt like I was coaching again. It started off with sitting with Urban Meyer at length, sitting in his office, and I felt like I was an assistant coach again. And then visiting their facilities, their facilities, which we'll get a look at later, and sitting in on a team meeting, visiting with their away coach. I tell you, I'm excited to see this football team. To no surprise, this is a good football team.
Stokes the fires and maybe getting back in the coaching ranks for you.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's another story for another show. But how about this offense? As a coach, you got to be impressed with what they have done, especially last year as we break it down. Big Ten record in rushing yards. Carlos Hyde, a big reason for that. Look at the points. A school record, 637, 87 touchdowns. They did it on the ground. Hey, they did it through the air, too, as well, setting a school record with 38 touchdown passes as well. So can they build on that in 2014? Well, here in the spring game, the situation is that Braxton Miller will not play, has not done a whole lot in the spring because of the shoulder injury in the Orange Bowl against Clemson. Did play throughout that game as well and played well. But as far as the backup situation is concerned, that's one of the points we're going to keep an eye on this afternoon.
Yeah, this might be a good thing because Braxton Miller's played a lot of football. Everybody knows that's the guy that's going to be the quarterback next year. My big question, who's going to be the backup? And I say that because who could forget what Kenny Guyton meant to this football team, this football program, how he came off the bench when Braxton Miller was injured, and, you know, the style of play where Braxton runs the ball that much, he may get banged up. Who's going to come off the bench and be this year's Kenny Guyton?
Yeah, Guyton coming off the bench in those early season games to get the wins for Ohio State as they went on to win 12 straight games, but then lose the final 2 of the season in the Big Ten championship game and then in the Orange Bowl as well. Now, the offensive line is going to shuffle as well. A guy who didn't have a lot of experience last year going to be the anchor this year for Ohio State.
A year ago, Taylor Decker was the big question mark. Even after the spring game, Urban Meyer said, we still don't know about Taylor Decker. If he's good, we're going to be good. And you know what? He was good, and they were really good in the offensive line. Fast forward to this year, he's the mainstay. He's the leader. They need a lot of other guys to come along. I'm not sure they'll be as good, but they'll be pretty good.
The rushing attack, the best in the conference last year. In fact, over the last 2 years, how about 82 touchdowns rushing under Urban Meyer? But this year, the coach has given you some insight. During that visit that you had over the last 48 hours or so, he told you, Coach, we're going to throw that ball around a little bit more this season.
Yeah, he threw out a number. How he came up with it, he said, we're going to throw it 78% of the time. You know?
That's very precise.
Yeah, so, you know, he didn't say 80. He said 78. That's the type of guy Urban Meyer is. And the reason being they weren't, you know, they were good, great, running the football. He wants to get better. They weren't very good defensively. So he wants to test that defense, pass defense, and he wants to test his skill receivers on offense.
Dontre Wilson could be one of those key guys as far as the wide receivers are concerned. You see the average from last season for Wilson, but again, most of the attack was on the ground and Carlos Hyde doing a lot of the damage, along with Braxton Miller as well, using his feet and his arm. But Coach, you mentioned the defensive unit, and we will see some changes there as well. And for the defense, we go to the Big Ten championship game. That's December 7th in Indianapolis. A tight game. A win for Michigan State. Ultimately, Ohio State maybe just a play away from participating in the national championship game.
Well, yeah, I think that talking to Urban Meyer and the rest of the coaches and the players, they had that 4th and 1, and Danico Allen for Michigan State made a key play. If they would have picked up the first down, they could have very easily won that football game and been the national championship, and that still sticks in their craw a little bit.
You see that snapping that 24-game winning streak and the first loss for Urban Meyer as the head coach for the Buckeyes. Buckeyes as Brutus greets some of the fans. And look at Coach Meyer addressing his team. But here are some of the key numbers, the final 3 games, and those defensive deficiencies for this Ohio State team.
Well, you know, you talked a lot about the offensive statistics were very impressive. You just think how impressive they would have been if it would have been a normal Ohio State defense. But to think to be 110th in pass defense, 7th in the Big Ten Conference defense, that's unacceptable. That's the #1 priority for Urban Meyer in spring practice.
Well, he's brought in Chris Ash, who is the new co-defensive coordinator. And Ash comes from the staff at Arkansas with Brett Bielema, also in Wisconsin as well. And he brings the new wrinkle to the defensive side of the football for Coach Urban Meyer and his coaching staff.
Well, you know, the wrinkle might be the wrong word, because when you talk to Urban Meyer, he says, I am overhauling this. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. He said, our defense is broke. We're changing it. We're going to be more aggressive. We're going to challenge everything. I'm not sure we'll see it today, but you're going to see a lot of press coverage out of the Buckeyes in 2014 and a lot more blitzing.
Well, you got to appreciate his honesty, and here's the guys he's got up front. This defensive line, they're going to be game changers. They're going to dominate the game at times for Ohio State if it is to be successful during the course of 2014.
Well, we're only showing 4 guys there, Spence, Bennett, Washington, and Bosa, but they got a lot more guys than that. They'll probably play 8 or 9 guys, and I can tell you, looking at those guys walking around the Woody Hayes Athletic Facility, wow. You know, the Big Ten, comparing to the SEC, most coaches said the biggest difference is defensive line. Well, let me tell you, there's no one has as good a defensive line or as deep a defensive line in the country than the Ohio State Buckeyes.
So those, the 4 guys up front. Chris Ash, the new addition to the coaching staff and the co-defensive coordinator. He's got some experience, no question about it. And he's going to bring a new perspective to this defense. And Coach Meyer, as you said, candid about it. He wants his team to respond on the defensive side of the ball, trying to change the culture a little bit, at least defensively.
Well, I sat in Coach Ash's meeting yesterday with the safeties, and I couldn't be more impressed. That guy is a good football coach. And I say that because when he threw the questions out to the players, they had the answers. Everybody knows the coach knows what to do. His players know what to do.
So it appears that they are on schedule so far as we get ready for the spring game. And just moments ago, Lisa Byington had a chance to chat with the head coach for the Buckeyes, Urban Meyer.
Coach, you've worked a lot on the 4-6 A to B here this spring and trying to change the culture. Thank you. Do I pass?
Yeah, you pass. I think change the culture is harsh. You know, I think there's some units that needed to be in a side of the ball that we weren't pleased with. And so we're not big into blaming players and blaming coaches. We're into fixing things. And so I feel very good with the direction we're headed.
How do you evaluate then a 4-6 A to B in a setting here like this?
Easiest evaluation there is. The one thing is that's a very evaluation-friendly conversation. Are you going as hard as you can? And if you can't play. You can't coach. You're not doing it here. And so that's been very easy to evaluate.
No Braxton Miller here today. How do you evaluate? What have you been impressed with Jones and Barrett here in the spring?
Surprisingly well. You know, I was very concerned. We need to go recruit a quarterback, but Cardell has really done a nice job. I mean, he's the #2 by far. JT really did something, especially his last 4 or 5 practice. So it was a little bit of a blessing in disguise when Braxton went down, so we got to see what we got.
Defense has been a focus. You have 2 new guys on your defensive staff, and I know you don't show your whole hand here at something like this, but for the fans watching today, defensively, how will you look different?
Yeah, we won't blitz a lot. I mean, those days of not showing your hand are over. I mean, everybody gets every video. People will be televising this and watching it. So I just want to see guys make plays.
What do you have to see finally out of today that will make you feel good going into the 2014 season?
We're going to throw the ball a lot today, so we're not very good on pass defense, and we were okay on throwing offense. We just didn't do it a lot. So I want to see execution and you guys make plays in the secondary as well as wide receivers.
Thanks for the sunshine. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. A perfect conference record a season ago for Ohio State. The quest for a Big Ten championship starts today. Scarlet and Gray on the Big Ten Network. Back in Columbus, Ohio, it is an absolutely spectacular and perfect day for the spring games. Scarlet and Gray here in Columbus, and the fans have turned out to get a look at the 2014 edition of the Buckeyes. From the shoe, we've already had an exciting day. We had a lacrosse game between the Buckeyes and Michigan, prior to our game this afternoon. And during the course of the last day or so, Coach Mason here got a chance to go behind the scenes at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. This is a place where only the privileged can go, those who wear the scarlet and gray. But, Coach, you got to go behind closed doors to the inner sanctum of Ohio State football.
Well, you're right. It's sacred ground, and I talked to a lot of state people. They've been by this place a million times, but they've never been inside. Urban Meyer was so gracious to let us go inside. This is the opening hallway. When I tell you, I'm not exaggerating, it must be 100 yards long, and it takes you really from the history of football and everything they're trying to accomplish. And they're not about this at Ohio State, that they're just trying to put guys in the National Football League, but they put a lot in there. There's Woody Hayes. There's Earl Bruce. He'll be with us at halftime. You've got John Cooper. Then you're going to have Jim Tressel. And then you've got the future. And by the future, what I'm talking about is that man right there, Coach Urban Meyer. And there's no one that doesn't think that this program is good hands with Urban Meyer. He's really something. He's special. You talk about success. Big Ten championship. Partner, they got loads of them right there. And it's not just athletic success, it's academic success. They emphasize that nonstop. One of the things they incorporate in this program all the time is block of life. It's not just success in football, it's preparing yourself for what you're going to do after life. You think about the awards that we won. 7 Heisman trophies. Archie Griffin, he's the alumni director here at The Ohio State University. Outland trophies, Buckeyes Award, you name it, they got it here at Ohio State. The Buckeye leaves on the helmet. That's one thing that the players, they really like. You talk about equipment. They put all the equipment out there, and Urban Meyer insists that they're going to expect the best from their players. They're going to put their players in the best. There is the team meeting room, and Urban let me come into this team meeting yesterday, and we'll get into that later. I could not have been more impressed with the message that he gave his football team. And it wasn't just about football, I promise you. There is the head guy's office. How is that?
Behind the closed doors.
Behind the if you want to be a recruit at Ohio State, you get to sit in there and talk to Urban Meyer, and hopefully you'll shake his hand and become an Ohio State Buckeye. And the weather isn't always great here in Columbus.
It's perfect today.
So when you have to go inside, there's the indoor facility. I've never seen one better. You can punt a football there and not hit the ceiling. There's the outside practice field, and they just told us yesterday that when spring practice is over, which happens today, they're replacing all those fields. They seem perfectly good to me, but they're going to put new ones in. And then the final shot, Coach Woody Hayes. There is the chalkboard that someone uncovered. That was his last book that he was working on in the old ROTC building. Unfortunately, he passed away before he finished it. I want to just tell you something. I could keep going through that facility time and time. How could you not be?
It is just so impressive. 5 national championships for Coach Hayes. 43 bowl games in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center is just so vast and impressive to the current players as well, to the tradition and the fabric of Ohio State football.
Well, you see it right here. Yeah, it's spring practice, but, the thing about Urban Meyer, he's always going to have some drills, and, he likes the toughness, the competitiveness. There's one-on-one in football. You got to beat a guy one-on-one. And, their motto this year is 4 to 6 seconds. That's what an average play takes. A to B. Go as hard as you can for 4 to 6 seconds. Get from point A or B, and they constantly emphasize it. And right here, when you put 2 guys out, this is just a one-on-one drill. But if you won't compete to win and go as hard as you possibly can in front of your teammates, you'll never do it. There's a lot of pressure on those guys right now.
Coach Urban Meyer has done such a tremendous job, but keeping the level of intensity at such a high rate for such a consistent basis and distance, it's staggering, and it's starting right now at the spring football game. The coach is having to break up a couple of players who are fired up and ready for this game here in the spring. Let's take a listen. This is a one-on-one drill. Coach is right in the faces of the players. There's Urban Meyer in the white. Last minute instruction for both players.
Tyvus Powell. Tyvus Powell. He's got a black jersey. I don't know what that
Wants a reset here. Coaches have to hold back the players. And the crowd reacts. This is just a prelude to spring football here in Columbus, Ohio. A couple of QBs going head-to-head. Let's keep it clean, gentlemen.
You know, normally quarterbacks don't want to succeed like that because someone will say, maybe you should be a tight end.
Coach Urban Meyer in his third season. The Orange Bowl last year, 24 straight wins. On to the Big Ten championship a season ago in that great game against Michigan State at Indianapolis and Lucas Oil Stadium. The 125th year of collegiate football here at Ohio State. We slow it down as the QBs go pad to pad and helmet to helmet.
Well, right there, you see the guy that won in the red jersey. There's a saying in football, low man wins. He was lower, he got leverage, he won the drill.
Coach, your impressions of Urban Meyer, you've been down on the sidelines motivating players and trying to get the most out of them. He has done that so well at Ohio State.
Well, the word that comes to mind when I think of Coach Urban Meyer is intense. And, you know, the other thing you see right here that he's done an unbelievable job is getting the student body involved. He does the quick cows, and the student body, the band, everybody here does it with him. Spectacular. Great idea.
The involvement of the student body, the bands, the crowd, it is all part of the flavor of the spring game here in 2014.
You think of the student involvement. They do the quick cows, and the whole stadium gets in, but he does it in front of the student section. They had a student appreciation day that everybody turns out for, and this year he had another wrinkle. They had a race, and the fastest guys are going to get the race today.
We'll see that later on today, as some of the students will race some of the football players. And this was Saturday at Student Appreciation Day, and Coach Meyer right in the middle of some fans who they appreciate what this football team and Coach Meyer has done over the last 2 years.
Well, you think about the students here at Ohio State. How do you get close to the action like that unless Urban Meyer does something like that? And then all of a sudden, you know, every guy that's bragging in the dorm that's a regular student, hey, I can run as fast as that guy. Well, let's see if you can or not.
So it has been quite a lead up to this spring football game. Scarlet and Gray as the band starts to take the field here at the Shoe, Ohio Stadium. And again, the 125th year of competition for the Buckeyes. 43 bowl games, 34 Big Ten championships, the last coming in 2009. They've won a share or an outright championship 5 straight years in 05 to 09. But Coach Meyer trying to continue that incredible tradition here at Ohio State in his third season.
One thing about Ohio State, everywhere you look, there's tradition. And you're seeing the band right there, the Ohio State marching band that is respectfully referred to as the best damn land in the land. And they are good, a lot of tradition there.
All right, let's listen in a little bit to this Ohio State band as it plays prior to the spring game. the field. 12-2 last season, perfect in conference play. 7-0 here at the Shoe. 5-0 away. First in the leaders division for the second straight year. The Shoe is the place for the Buckeyes. Overall, coach, 411 against 109 losses and 20 ties in a facility so rich in tradition that opened up back in 1922.
That's a long time ago, and it's changed over the years, though. You know, you think about how they've expanded the capacity. For all purposes, they've closed in the south end, the open end of the Horseshoe, and it's a lot tougher place to play now than it used to be because it's so noisy.
Yeah, $9 million expansion project. Another 2,400 seats, some additional lighting as well to Ohio Stadium. That largest crowd, over 106,000 a couple of years ago, as we hear the national anthem.
Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the center of the field for today's coin toss. Coach Earl
Thanks
Meyer
to the Ohio State Band for getting us started this afternoon. Here in Columbus, Ohio, the weather is perfect. The coaches looked over the rosters, divvied up the teams. Scarlet against Gray for 2014. As we'll get our first look at the Ohio State Buckeyes all the way to that Big Ten championship game a season ago. And then the Orange Bowl on January 3rd. Both very competitive games, but the Buckeyes coming out on the losing end in both instances after winning 24 in a row to set a school record. 24 straight games after taking over Urban Meyer. All victories for Coach Meyer.
You think that's impressive? Huh? Easy to say, hard to do. And, you know, you mentioned that Clemson game. It's amazing how one game can have an impact on what you do. Talk about overhauling the defense. Urban told me he's going to build this defense from the back forward. I said, what does that mean? He said, normally you load up everybody to stop the run. Most coaches talk about that. We did a great job of stopping the run, but we couldn't stop the pass. Played Sammy Watkins against Clemson. He absolutely tore us up because we didn't have the ability to double team him. 16 catches, 227 yards. He said, we're going to give a little bit up against the run to get better against the pass. And with that defensive line, I don't think he has to give too much up.
That Orange Bowl final 40-35. Ohio State falling to Clemson. Now you want to tweet your questions about Ohio State football and our spring game today with the hashtag #BigFootball. We want those viewer tweets and your interaction here at the Big Ten Network as we are just moments away. Again, it is B1G Football, the hashtag. So send us your feedback. Tom Wormy, Glenn Mason, and Lisa Byington will join us momentarily and have reports from the sideline throughout the afternoon. We talked about that winning streak of 24 games for Urban Meyer, the third time in his coaching career in which he has had a winning streak of 20 games or more. Coach, I'm talking about 3 separate times he has won 20 games or more in a row. Incredible.
I wish I could have done it just once, you know.
Take the one.
And most coaches would. I mean, that's unbelievable. That's consistency. And, you know, that's part of the product of him when he calls the grind.
Scarlett starts with the ball.
Well, you know, Urban told me, he says, get ready. He said, I'm going to throw the ball about 78% of the time. And he kind of chuckled a little bit. He said, I'm going to test my young quarterbacks, and we weren't very good on pass defense last year. A lot of work there. And I got to find out about my receivers. They got to get better.
rushing game was so dominant last year for Ohio State, averaging close to 309 yards per game, best in the conference and 5th in the nation. Coach, they ran for 4,321 yards to set a Big Ten record. Elliott on the run.
Well, when you're scoring 45 points a game or more, you're going to win a lot of games. And, you know, the thing about it, you see the no-huddle offense, and historically, you know, that wasn't Urban Meyer. He didn't want to do that. He likes the quarterback. He had Tim Tebow down in Florida. He likes them to get in there. But when he hired Tom Herman from Iowa State, Tom convinced him the stress it puts on defense, that's why we got to go to it. Made a lot of sense to Urban, and that's why they kind of mix huddle and no huddle.
Deep pass. Broken up. Corey Smith was the intended receiver on the play.
Well, there's a lot of protection right here, and you can see it's a nicely thrown football. You know, Urban's going to look at that film and say, you know, we got to come down with that. That's why he's throwing the ball out. The receiver's got to make that play. It's one-on-one. Go make the play. Otherwise, it's just a foul ball.
Cardale Jones quarterbacking this Ohio State Scarlet team. Puts it up again with a little swing out to Curtis Samuel. Cardale Jones only attempted 2 passes last season in limited action. Braxton Miller with the headset on, and that little thing sticking off the side, that is a camera, Coach, and they want to keep an eye on how Braxton Miller responds to the different offensive sets that they put out there.
These guys don't miss a trick. They knew he wasn't going to be in spring practice. Mark Quisenberry, the video guy, what I call the video guy, he invented this, and it's not just an earpiece when it's going on. There's a camera, so he can see what you can see what he's looking at, and then they record what he's talking about. So mentally, he's going through every play here.
This is Jones again. The watchful eye of Miller off to his right. He's taken down.
You know, you look at the play of the defensive line, and, you know, they left a lot to be desired on defense last year in the passing game. But, you know, when you look at them, they were #1 in the Big Ten in sacks. They had 42. And you would think if you're that good on the pass rush, you'd play better pass defense, but it just didn't correlate that way.
And Noah Spence had 6 sacks on his own. Second best Big Ten conference.
He plays defensive end. The defensive end position they call Viper. Kind of sounds something real dangerous, doesn't it? I don't know what a Viper is, but it scares me.
They expect that position to be dangerous this season. Open up against Navy at Ohio Stadium, August 30th. A team that they have never lost to, 4-0 all time against the midshipmen. Haven't played them since 01. We'll have some punts. We will not have returns during the course of the game. It'll be a stop time clock in the first half, and they're scheduled to just run it in the second half here from Ohio Stadium.
Well, you talk about a great teaching situation. There's a punt. The guy that's going down to cover it, he does exactly his talk. He went to the goal line. He turned his back to the goal line and shielded the goal line, and that's the difference where this next offense is going to start on the 1-yard line compared to the 20. And those are the type of things in spring games that you just don't use after this game and show him. He'll use that all the way during the summer, and he'll reinforce that's the type of play. Field position is so important in college football.
Again, we are in Columbus, Ohio. Bright, sunshine-filled afternoon for the Scarlet and Gray Ohio State spring football game. Tom Wormley along with Glenn Mason, former assistant coach and player for the Buckeyes, and Lisa Byington patrolling the sidelines. That one knocked away in the end zone. Scarlet wants a safety or a touchdown, even better. So Barrett was back to pass, and the pressure came. 94, Rashard Frazier.
Well, I've mentioned they just don't have a 4 defensive linemen. They got a whole host of them, which means there's competition. And Urban's motto this year of, 4 to 6, A to B, competition really encourages you to make sure you're going 4 to 6 to A or B, or there's going to be another guy in there.
Frazier 6'4", 272. And the senior from Middletown, Ohio, accounts for the first points of the game as he knocked that ball loose. J.T. Barrett quarterbacking the Gray team. Never got a chance to get that pass away. Well, the grind to be the best has already begun. Our guys deliver the latest on position battles, interviews, and a breakdown of the on-field action. The BTN Football Report, Spring Football Edition, coming up tonight, 10 Eastern on BTN and BTN to go. Already had our first highlight. The Scarlet and Gray game here at Ohio State. Rashad Frazier with the jarring hit in the end zone. So they'll put the ball at the 35 for the Gray team.
Well, there's no Carlos Hyde, obviously. He's gone, and what he did last year, I really thought he became a leader of that offense, his physical play. And, you know, they've got good running backs. I'm not sure they have the power type runner, and that's why I think they might go back to a little bit more east and west thing with the utilization of Dontre Wilson to get the stretch on the defense.
Carlos Hyde was the leading rusher in the Big Ten Conference a season ago as that pass falls incomplete. Hyde ran for over 1,500 yards, scored 15 touchdowns, and averaged 138.3 rushing yards per game for this 12-2 Buckeye team last year.
You saw the tight coverage there by the secondary, and sitting in Chris Ash's meeting, that's the thing he emphasized. You got to read the patterns. You got to anticipate. You've got to challenge throws. We do not want any give me completions. That was a good example of it right there.
J.T. Barrett in the shotgun. Pressure again. And it's 94 again, Frazier. So you see Coach Meyer with the white jacket on, consulting with his quarterback. Frazier's made another play early on in this spring game.
Yeah, Kyle Dotson, the left tackle, who happens to be a redshirt sophomore, he's given up 2 sacks so far. You know, and the left tackle position is so tough to play. It's the blind side, because if you miss your block, quarterback doesn't see that guy coming. It's a sack or a turnover.
So Ohio State team losing 4 offensive linemen from a season ago, including All-American Jack Newhart. 135 combined starts for that line last year, and now they turn to Taylor Decker, a junior who started all 14 games at right tackle last year. He's going to move to left tackle, but those are the guys absent from the line in 2014. Lindsley, the center. Lindsey. Marcus Hall. Norwell. Have a special teams punt. Again, there will be no return.
Yeah, you mentioned the center's gone, and the center position is so very important. It starts with him, but you know, they've got Jacoby Bourne. He's got some playing experience. Billy Price, who's a young guy, a redshirt sophomore that maybe a redshirt junior that is really pushing him, really coming on, and they feel good about that position. And I really think, you know, the standard of that offensive line last year was really good. It might have been the best offensive line in the country. Urban Meyer said that, and I know that he's so high on his line coach, Ed Werner. This one won't be to that magnitude, but I think before it's all said and done, by the time they line up their opening game against Navy, they're going to be pretty darn good.
An opening game on August 30th here at the Shoe. Throw it again, and this one's going to fall incomplete in the secondary. There's more spring game action on a Saturday on the Big Ten Network. Coming up at 4 o'clock, Wisconsin. The Penn State Nittany Lions at 6, and new head coach James Franklin. And then Nebraska tonight at 8, all times Eastern. Wisconsin, Penn State, and Nebraska to follow Ohio State in the Scarlet and Gray game. Jones is at quarterback for the Scarlet. Jacoby Moore in the center. Just a minimal gain for Ezekiel Elliott, the sophomore from St. Louis, Missouri.
Well, Jacoby Bourne, he comes from a football family. His father played at the University of Michigan. Brothers played here. In fact, one came on down to play here. And, you know, I mentioned Billy Price before. He's a redshirt freshman, and he's pushing Bourne for that starting position. And Billy Price might be the strongest football player on this team as a redshirt freshman. Pretty impressive.
Ezekiel Elliott scored a couple of rushing touchdowns last year for Ohio State. Missed the passing situation, and it's incomplete. Marcus Baugh couldn't handle it. The pass from Jones. So a little more special teams with 4:40 to go in the first.
Tom, you know, there's a lot of coaches around the country that are doing away with the spring games, and they say they just can't do it. Urban Meyer says, heck no. I'm not going to miss an opportunity like this in front of this type of fan, this type of additional pressure to see my younger players perform, and to see this crowd right here. You can see why he'd never want to give this up.
Braxton Miller again is on the sidelines, trying to return from a shoulder injury suffered early on in the Orange Bowl. So with 4:34 to go in the first quarter of the Scarlet and Gray game, we're going to step aside for just a moment. We'll come back to the shoe for more of the Spring Game 2014 edition. The Scarlet leads the Gray 6-0 in the first quarter. 4:34 to go from Ohio Stadium. As we lead up to 2014, you start it with Navy. Maybe you look down the schedule to November 8th at Michigan State. And the additions of Maryland and Rutgers to the conference this year as well, Coach Mason.
Well, the expansion is set. I think it's going to be quite an adjustment for Rutgers and Maryland once they get into conference play. When you start looking at slate of schedule, watch out. But for the Buckeyes, that's a tough opener, Navy. They play that option-type offense that you normally don't see. I think having them as a first game is an advantage because you have a lot of time during two-a-day practice to work on that. And then you've got Virginia Tech. And, you know, the Virginia Tech was down a little bit last year, but Frank Beamer, the coach down there, he can be dangerous.
First ever meeting between the schools on September 6th against Virginia Tech. Maryland and Rutgers are also the first ever meetings as we go down to the field. And Lisa Byington.
Yeah, well, we talked about the little contraption that Braxton Miller has on his head. Tell me about it, and how has it been effective for you here this spring?
It's some, concerning and quiz put together from my eye perspective. They can see from where I'm looking at, from the left side to the right side. And they can hear my voice, too, so it's pretty cool.
Who do you sit down with and evaluate that video with? Is it Coach Herman all the time?
Sometimes myself. I look at it on my iPad. It's with Coach Herman sometimes, too, so it's a nice little gig, you know, so I'm getting used to it.
Technology is amazing. We saw how important Kenny Guyton was in terms of filling your spot when you had to go out. What do you see from your backup guys right now?
Oh, man.
Around so we don't get hit.
Oh, man, me and KG it's a bond, like being brothers and stuff like that. So, it's just, we learn from each other. I miss him that he's gone. It's going to be an amazing year, so you got to get the young guys ready.
So pretend we're not here and kind of take me through what you would be talking about when you watch this next play. Can you do that here for us?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't want to give away too many tips, though. Too many people watching. So let me see right here. I see it's 3-by-1, solo coverage. Oh, yeah, I absolutely love that. Easy yards for quarterback. I love it. I love it.
Braxton, you're going into your senior year, and you've accomplished a lot. What's the one missing piece for you to make your career complete?
It's my senior year. I want to complete anything that's possible, like community-wise, being leadership, starting meetings without the coaches being there. you know, just learn the mental game. That's what it's all about, you know, from the next level. So just learn, and, you know, there's one piece everybody wants, that ring, too. So we'll work towards that, too.
What did 2013 teach you and this team coming back?
You know, just stay healthy throughout the whole season. You stay healthy, everything else goes smooth. And, you know, that's what we did with last season. And it's not a good run if you some of the main guys is hurt, and it's not a good, you know, you got a different game plan. You got to move guys around, so you got to stay healthy.
All right, don't drop that thing. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That's an expensive piece of equipment that Braxton Miller is wearing. It's quite some insight right there as he surveys his offensive teammates. 2 straight years as the Offensive Player of the Year. His career passing numbers, over 5,000 yards. The rushing's not too bad either. Over 3,000 for Braxton Miller as he tries to build on an incredible 3 years. His final year at Ohio State coming up in 2014 again. Hurt early in the season, ankle injury, and then later on in the season in the Orange Bowl, he said that in the 5th game, or the 5th play rather of the game, he fell awkwardly. He felt a pain in his shoulder. Now, he fought through it, and they almost upended number 12 Clemson. But Miller, subsequent surgery as well, and should be ready to go once we kick it off in late August, Coach.
I don't think there's any doubt that he'll be ready to go. And that contraption on his head right there, what a great idea. Players get better when they practice and when they play. When they're injured, they're over there. And, you know, typically as a coach, you're always saying, did you get that? Oh, yeah, I got it. You're watching that? Yeah, I'm doing that. But they're not. But this forces the guy, and they get feedback right away. So mentally, he's improving. Physically, he's fine. You know, I mean, he's shown that he can play this game where he's made great improvement, and that's where Urban Meyer wants to make even more improvement. Leadership, mental end of the game. He's doing that.
So we've got a field goal situation out there for the Gray. Put some points on the board.
Well, there's no penalty. They're just going to kick another one. Urban likes to do that in this setting because look at right there. You know, it's one thing when you, oh, Sean, I can kick him in practice, but now I got all these people out here, and Mom or Dad are sitting up there in the stands, and the girl I'm trying to get a date with, she's up there too. I got to make this. That's called pressure. Can you compete under pressure?
Nurnberger, then Clinton. His attempt. The kicker's getting a little bit of work right here. Nurnberger, it's been announced officially as a 42-yard attempt. So he played the wind on that one. There is a slight breeze blowing from the players right to left as they look at those goalposts. Key component, sometimes overlooked in the kicking game, Coach.
You better not overlook it.
That's right.
I can tell you that.
That's right.
You know, there's talk at some level eliminating the extra point, you know, because it seems like it's automatic, but it's not automatic. You know, it's easy to say that, and so all of a sudden a guy has to go in and kick one in front of 100,000 people when the game's on the line, and you make it, you win, or you tie. If you miss it, you got problems.
It's good experience for Nurnberger, the freshman from Buckner, Kentucky, kicking in front of the thousands, clad in scarlet and gray, enjoying spring football on a sensational Saturday.
You mentioned Kentucky. Urban Meyer's done an unbelievable job recruiting here, and
Samuel on the reception.
Now you see that tackle by that defensive back. I sat in that meeting yesterday. There's 3 ways that they're taught to tackle. Either they can bite the ball, they can grab and roll, or if they're in bad shape, dive and swat for the heels. He bit the ball there. But going back to recruiting, they just don't recruit the state of Ohio where there's great players. They're all over the place. You look at last year, you got 9 from Ohio, 2 from New Jersey, 1 from New York, 1 from Texas.
Jones scrambles away. The officials have thrown some penalty markers. Caught well out of bounds.
1 from Michigan, 2 from Georgia, 2 from Illinois, 1 from Indiana, 1 from Florida, 1 from Virginia, 1 from Pennsylvania, and 1 from Kentucky. But that tells you if there's a good football player out there and they're interested, he's going to find it.
penalty to bring up third down. Just about 2.5 minutes to go in the first quarter of the spring game for 2014. At Ohio State, we've seen a lot of pass plays. Coach Meyer would probably want to see a few more completions, but they are trying to work on that passing game. Last year they averaged just over 200 yards per game passing. That was 8th in the conference. And Jones now is 3 of 7 completions in the game.
Well, I think if you can average 45 points a game, Coach Meyer really doesn't care if he runs it or throws it or runs inside or outside. He'll take that.
It's 45.5 points per game, best in the Big Ten Conference. They scored 637 points during the course of the year. That was a school record. And some of the new faces that are here for the spring game. And the freshman rundown.
Well, you know, that's a new trend in the last couple of years. You see more and more young guys out of high school that take care of their academics. They graduate early, and they come in here, and they're ready for spring practice. It really gives them a head start on earning some playing time. You know, talking to Urban Meyer, he said in the past they always look to redshirt young guys, and he thinks maybe he made a mistake on a couple guys last year that he could have played and they could have been better. And he's saying going forward, as well as he's recruited those talent, if they can play, he's playing them.
Yeah, you saw Raekwon McMillan on the sideline. Curtis Samuel already has a couple of catches as well, part of the incoming freshman class. 2014.
We showed you those unbelievable facilities at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, and that's so important in recruiting. And one thing we didn't show you was the locker room. We couldn't go in there because guys were getting dressed, but Coach Meyer showed me the renovation plans right after next year. They're knocking everything out. They're putting $2.5 million in there. It's going to be unbelievable.
Barrett, design run, close to midfield. It's a little charge here to the crowd. Here the first quarter with 1:43 to go.
Yep, J.T. Barrett getting some good. Here he is, a young guy from Wichita Falls, Texas, and doing a great job of protecting that football. He's holding it high and tight, got the rear tip of the ball protected. Urban says he's going to be a good one. All he needs is a little experience.
Redshirt freshman, 6'1", 225 pounds. Number 16 in the black jersey. He's going to do it again. Gets spun down on the play.
That play you saw right there on film is what you call the blast play. It's an underneath fake to the motion guy, and that's why Dontre Wilson is so important. The bind that puts the defensive end on. If you widen for that speed, that quarterback's going to pull the ball and go inside with the backside guard pulling. Like an off-tackle power, it's an extra guy in offense.
Completion for the Gray. And close to midfield. Johnny Dixon, freshman from West Palm Beach, Florida. 5'11" and 198 pounds inside of a minute to go in the first.
Yeah, that program down at Dwyer High School in West Palm Beach, Jack Daniels is the high school coach. They do an unbelievable job. They're really successful.
Final 30 seconds. The ball near midfield for the Gray. Powered up the middle. Deontay Dunn.
That was a good job by Dunn, in my estimation. If you saw him, he made a cut to the right, but then he got his shoulder square to the goal line, and he went north and south, and he took the attack to the defender. That's what you need to do to gain that extra yard.
Deontay Dunn, 6 feet, 216 pounds. He's a sophomore from Canton, Ohio. This is the final play of the first period. Barrett's pass, complete. Gets swallowed up on the play, Jeff Green.
You talk about Canton. He went to Canton Glen Oak High School, you know, Stark County up there. I want to tell you, Stark County, the number of great football players that county's produced that have played here at Ohio State, too long to number.
We'll take a timeout. The first quarter has ended. JT Barrett on the run for the Gray in the spring game. Scarlett leads the Gray 6-3, start of the second quarter. Before we do that, we go down to the field and Lisa Byington.
Yeah, standing by with co-defensive coordinator Chris Ash. Coach, let's walk just a little bit over here and get out of the way of your guys. You were brought in to sort of fix this pass defense. What was your first message day one with this defense?
Well, the first thing we needed to do, we needed to get a little swagger and some confidence back. You know, Ohio State's been known for great defensive backs, just great defense in general. I think that's been lost a little bit the last couple of years. So the first thing we needed to do is we needed to get that back.
What's the biggest step? What's the biggest stride you guys have taken through 13, 14 practices so far?
Well, the kids have done a great job of buying into what we're teaching. They're giving great effort. They're challenging throws at all positions, whether linebacker, corner, safety, and they're having a lot of fun, and we like to see that every day.
Back up here, one more question for you. You have to work side by side here with co-defensive coordinator Luke Fickell. Why is that relationship working between you two guys?
Well, neither one of us have an ego. We're both selfless, and we want one thing. We want to have success for these kids. And there's no egos, there's no agendas. We understand the vision that Coach Meyer has for the defense, and we're working hard to make it happen.
All right, thank you for the time.
Yep, thank you.
Lisa, thank you. Some of the insight, Coach Ash, and what he brings. Co-defensive coordinator, Coach Fickell. The Grays continuing to move the football. Barrett's pass popped up in the air, but ruled incomplete. Luke Fickell, the co-defensive coordinator. He was the head coach back in 2011 as well.
And a great player here at Ohio State. And you talk about a guy that was durable. I think he played in more football games as a defensive lineman and never got hurt. Unbelievable.
One-handed grab is made successfully on the sideline. Michael Thomas from Los Angeles outstretched for the catch.
By way of Fork Union. And now there's another place, Fork Union Military Academy down there in Virginia. And you think that a lot of players have come from there. Don't forget Eddie George, the Heisman Trophy winner, came from Fork Union.
Eddie George winning the Heisman Trophy back in 1995. One of 6 different players in Ohio State history to win the Heisman. 2 for Archie Griffin in 74 and 75, and most recently Troy Smith, winner of the Heisman Trophy in 2006.
You see Dunn make that cut, bouncing to the outside again, staying square. That tells me he's got really good vision. He saw that one step, he planted the foot, bounced the outside, north and south. He's got a good feel for that running play.
Dunn again inside the 10. Chris Worley finally dragged him down for the Scarlet.
There he goes there again. And I'm gonna well coached. I'm going to tell you, the way they protect that football, and you know, you don't want to fumble the ball here at Ohio State because they got too much talent. You'll be on the sideline.
Take Dunn. Protection there for the throw, and a flag comes out. The intended receiver was Thomas in the end zone.
While they're marking that penalty off, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that they had a little function last night. They're the long-time equipment.
Defense, hands to the face, number 13, half the distance to the goal, first down.
Hands to the face, you can't do it. Yep, got his face mask.
Stephen Collier on the infraction.
I was talking about the longtime retired equipment man at Ohio State, John Bozick, who had passed away some time ago. They had a function last night in his memory. About 300 former players and coaches showed up and told stories, and everybody, anybody over the years that had been involved with Ohio State football program has fond memories of Mr. John Bozick. He's surely missed.
Ron Tanner has the play there. It was Eli Apple on the penalty, but his defensive teammates trying to help him out as the Gray puts pressure on the end zone. Buzz Apple coming in and closing quickly. 6'1", 195-pound redshirt freshman. Double forward to Dunn, who gets down to the 1.
I saw on Twitter that Coach Urban Meyer's wife, Shelly, she put on there to Tom Herman, please do me a favor and run the Shelly shovel pass. So I don't know if that's what they call it or not, but I read it.
Gray takes a timeout on 4th and goal. J.T. Barrett leading them down the field. Barrett is now 9 of 13 passing, 57 yards in total. He's got him down at the 1-yard line, but it is 4th down. So chance to implement the 4th down and short situation play for head coach Urban Meyer.
Well, you heard Coach Meyer in the interview with Lisa. They said, they're going to play it, pretty vanilla on defense. They're going to play some base defense. They're probably not going to blitz very much. I got the feeling, being around that program yesterday, no one put it in these terms, but I think they're looking to what Michigan State has done on defense. Not only the best defense in the Big Ten the last couple of years, the best defense in the country. And you're probably thinking, if they can do it up there in East Lansing with their athletes, there's no reason why we can't do it down here in Columbus. And so that's what you hear about the press coverage, you hear about the zone blitzes, you hear about denying everything. You will see a much more aggressive defense out of the Buckeyes next year.
Michigan State with a school record 13 wins last season. From the diamond to the field and everywhere else in between. We keep you up to date on all the happenings in the conference. This week in the Big Ten, tomorrow, 6 Eastern on BTN. 4th and goal, 1-yard line for the Gray. Dunn tries to ram it in. He's got it. A Gray touchdown. Breonte Dunn. Sophomore running back takes it in. 5 carries and 30 yards. We're done in the game, and he completes it with the TD. Clinton will attempt the extra point. Senior from Dublin, Ohio, knocks it through. Still working on the extra point practice. Clinton back in there. So they moved it back to a 37-yard field goal attempt. Knocks it through. Nurnberger to get his chance at a 37-yarder. And the freshman does the job.
Looks like to me they got pretty good kickers, huh?
Good 1-2 punch. Both from 37 yards away. And now we're going to go to 47 yards as the distance and the number to cover.
Well, the number of touchdowns they scored last year, these guys didn't get a chance to kick many field goals.
87 touchdowns last year for Ohio State, a school record. And it's good from 47 yards away for Clinton. These guys are getting a lot of airtime.
And if you remember, Urban Meyer started last year. I think the first touchdown they scored, they went for 2.
See if they practice that as well during the course of the afternoon here at the Ohio State spring game. Nurnberger will get another crack at it from 47 yards away.
is my point exactly.
Yeah, they only had, in the last 5 games, they only had 3 field goal attempts. Did not attempt a field goal in the Orange Bowl against the Clemson Tigers.
That translates into either you're a big play offense or you're really good in the red zone. And I think with Ohio State, it meant both.
In the red zone, they were 95%, second best in the conference, and that included 53 touchdowns in the red zone, number 1 in the Big Ten.
Well, when you get down to the red zone, you expect to, score 85, 90% of the time, unless you don't have a kicker. But the important thing there is that touchdown ratio.
60 of 63 times in the red zone, Ohio State came away with points. You got to move back now, Coach. This is that was about 52 yards here.
Into the wind.
Into the breeze, yes.
You call it a breeze. That kicker's calling it a wind.
If you look at the flags in the stadium, it is definitely a wind. You're right. Floating, yeah. It's good. Nurnberger from 52 yards away into the breeze. And he just earned a few points with that kick. Not on the scoreboard necessarily, but with the coaching staff. So we told you, the viewer, to be interactive with us. It's G.J. Maidberger. How will the Buckeyes fill the void from the loss of Carlos Hyde? Well, that's a big loss. Carlos Hyde last year, over 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns. Some monster games during the course of the year for Carlos Hyde. Coach, how do they fill that void? You can't. Hard to do.
They've got good running backs. I'm not saying they have a Carlos Hyde in that backfield right now. But I've talked about Gunn quite often. Ezekiel Elliott's had some playing time. They've been really high on Rod Smith. I don't know what he's done so far today. But I think what they're going to do, I mentioned it before, I think using a guy like Dontre Wilson will kind of be Ohio State's answer to Percy Harvin, who Urban Meyer had down at Florida, and he puts so much speed to the perimeter, it opens things up.
Carlos Hyde over 3,000 yards rushing in his career. Just the 8th player to do so in Ohio State history.
Let's not forget that Braxton Miller, he's an awful good running quarterback. He's a great quarterback, but he can really run. Now, in saying that, though, Urban Meyer and Tom Herman, the offensive coordinator, they want to minimize, because they don't want him to get hurt, called runs or the number of times that he pulls the ball down, undesigned runs on pass plays.
Braxton Miller is also over 300 yards rushing in his career. 3,054 and 32 touchdowns. He's a sack for the Gray. Tyquan Lewis, 6'3" and 260, makes the play.
You talked about Chris Ash being a new member of the staff. Let's not forget that Larry Johnson came over from Penn State, and I can tell you, he is a defensive line coach deluxe. When you think about the defensive lineman that he produced at Penn State over all those years, great coach, and he has great talent. That is a formula for a headache for opposing teams for Ohio State.
With the wind, drives the ball all the way back inside the 5-yard line.
I also have to mention, we talked so much, there's Larry right there. Great coach, great person. Talked about the commitment to recruiting by Urban Meyer here at Ohio State, and that guy right there is an unbelievable recruiter.
I spent a lot of years in Pennsylvania covering Penn State as well, and got to know Coach Johnson, his son, who contended for the Heisman as well as a running back at Penn State. As part of all that great success for that program, and it's got a new coach this year, James Franklin, who comes from Vanderbilt. He had such incredible success at Vanderbilt as well. It's going to be quite a season in the Big Ten. You've got the East and the West, and Ohio State will be in the East with Indiana, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, and Rutgers. Penn State is on the schedule. Larry Johnson will get a chance to go there in October 25th at Penn State, where Ohio State has won 4 of the last 5 meetings between those two teams. Broken up Again, you see the deep passing attack. Barrett couldn't connect with Dixon.
Well, that defensive set that you saw right there, the corner is up there in press coverage. He's going to get his hands on the receiver, and that's what they have to worry about is the deep pass, because when you're in press coverage, Tom, the two plays that you're taking away is the quick out and hopefully the quick slant. You're making them go deep, and that's what that defensive secondary is supposed to anticipate. That is what Chris Ash, the secondary coach, emphasized to those guys so much.
Barrett from his own end zone. It's completed over the middle. Michael Thomas. So you see the score 10-7. He gave the Scarlet team a point after all that kicking with the field goals. And Nurnberger and Clinton, who went back and forth with field goals from various distances. Again with the toss up there midfield for Johnny Dixon, who's been a popular target in the first half.
Now, why are they throwing so much? I'm sure some people are sitting here. Well, they're doing that because of the defensive coverage. You're taking away those quick throws, so they convert those right there. Now, the problem is you got to complete them. Otherwise, they're just, you know, foul balls. And they've had some opportunities, but they haven't came away and make the play. And again, Urban Meyer was talking, not only the quarterback, he wants to see his receivers make those plays.
This team was tops in total offense a season ago. It was 512 yards per game for Ohio State. As we get out of the field, and Lisa Byington.
Yeah, with Ryan Shazier, and you were waiting to hear your name called here eventually in the NFL draft. Tell me what teams you visited and what teams primarily are showing interest in you.
I'm pretty much getting teams, a lot of interest from a lot of teams, but I've been to like St. Louis, Buffalo, Oakland, Arizona, Pittsburgh, New Orleans. I've been all over the place, and I still have a few more visits to go, but a lot of teams are showing interest, and a lot of they're about even.
It's an unusual process. I read a story that your dad showed you old tapes of folks like Lawrence Taylor and guys who really kind of attacked the football on the defensive side. How did that impact you and the player you eventually became?
I feel like that really helped me out a lot because it really made me become a really aggressive player and really want to hit people. When I see guys like that hitting, it just made me want to be like those guys or even be better. So I just use that to my advantage and try to do it on the field.
Of course, the one knock on you is the fact that you might not be as big as some of the other guys in the NFL. How do you feel like you can counter that criticism at the next level?
I might not be as big as some of the other guys, but some of the other guys aren't as fast as I am. And I've been talking to a lot of coaches, and they say my weight right now is fine. And in about 2 or 3 years, I'll probably gain some more weight because I've been gaining weight every year since I've been here. So in about 2 or 3 years, I'll probably be about 240. And I've been around with a lot of guys in the draft right now, and I feel like I'm about the same size as a bunch of them.
Well, good luck. We appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom.
Lisa, thank you. A guy who had 143 tackles last year to lead this team. Ryan Shazier.
Tom, I was standing on the sideline in the championship game in Indianapolis against Michigan State, and I turned to Howard Griffin and I said, how many tackles does he have? He was all over the field. And I can tell you, he might not be the biggest guy, but he can run. And I started thinking to myself, if he can't play linebacker at the next level, he might be able to play safety because he runs like a safety.
In their win against Indiana on November 23rd, Shazier had 20 tackles out of his linebacker position in a 42-14 win. That was the win that set the school record for consecutive victories at 23 with that win against Indiana here at the Horseshoe.
Well, there's no more Shazier, so who's going to take his place on defense? You know, Joshua Perry's been around, and he's doing a fine job having a good spring, but the two guys that Coach Meyer is really excited about, young guys, Darren Lee, a sophomore from New Albany, and Chris Worley, who's from Glenville High School. You ever think Glenville High School ever had any players? The number of players that have come out of that program and continue to come out of that program up in Cleveland is unbelievable. Ted Ginn Sr., the job that he's done putting that program together is phenomenal. But those two guys right there, they really think are going to be big-time players for the Ohio State defense.
Saw Joshua Perry, number 37, for the great team. There's Christopher Worley as well from Cleveland, Ohio. a big game for the freshmen to get a taste of this setting, test their skills against their teammates. A lot of the fans getting their first chance to see some of these players after all the drills in the spring leading up to today, which is really a celebration of Ohio State football and all the great things to come and all the great things that have happened here with the 7 national championships, 5 under Woody Hayes. I mean, you talk about the great programs in college football throughout the landscape in this nation. And this team is right at the top with all of the best.
You're starting to see that flavor out of the run game and the pass game that I talked about, where they're trying to stretch that defense perimeter as fast as they possibly can. That's what you do out of a spread offense. And they have the luxury. You saw Nick Van Eck catch the ball, tight end. He's pretty darn good, and he's the backup to Jeff Hireman, who's injured. They have really 2 big-time tight ends here in this program.
Turning the corner and inside the 30. Rumbling Warren ball. But there is a flag on the play. Ball, the sophomore from right here in Columbus, will have his run nullified by the penalty marker.
First down.
St. Francis de Sales. Good program, good high school, good coaches.
So they're going to still spot the ball at the 22 with just over 3 minutes to go in the second period.
Coach Meyer ran a replay and overturned.
So that penalty was overruled by Coach Meyer, who without question has the authority to do so whenever he would like to. So Meyer in 2012, the National Coach of the Year, and you get the Woody Hayes Trophy when you win that one. Extra special in this part of the country. A couple of national championships in 2006 and 2008 with the program at Florida. 2006. We all know who the opponent was in that game. From Glendale, Arizona, #1 Buckeyes, losing to Florida 41-14. That the overall career starting at Bowling Green, on to Utah, Florida, and now here with the Scarlet and Gray.
That's what you would call an impressive resume right there.
You know, his first 10 years as a head coach, he won 104 games, Coach Mason, 3rd most in the history of college football. Playing college football since 1869. One of the teams involved in that game will join the Big Ten Conference in Rutgers.
That'd be Rutgers.
How about that? Rutgers and Princeton.
The other one's not coming.
No. But Rutgers and Maryland join the conference for 2014. As the footprint enlarges for this conference. There's the East Division.
I have a saying I say all the time that there's only 2 types of coaches out there. There's guys that love the coach, and there's guys love being the coach. There's a big difference. Urban Meyer, he loves the coach. He's involved in every phase of this program.
That 24-game winning streak, best in school history, 4th longest in Big Ten history before it ended with the Big Ten championship game. This one to the end zone and incomplete. Johnny Dixon was back there trying to catch it. Little mustard on that toss by J.T. Barrett.
Yeah, I would say that during spring practice that accuracy has been would be the downside for J.T. Now, he's got a strong arm. You can see that. Speed of the ball, and he'll get better. He'll keep working on it.
He's getting a lot of work today, Coach. 14 of 24 and 106 yards. And he's got him knocking on the door again as the ball is spotted at the 10-yard line. We're going to call it second and goal. Coach Meyer with a quick word for Johnny Dixon in that slot position. Now inside the 5. Nick Van Eck. Makes the catch for the Gray. 1:20 to go in the second quarter.
Nick Vanette, local guy out of Westerville. Good size for a tight end. 6'6", 255. Tough position to play. You got to be nimble enough to get there and down the seam to catch the deep route when they throw it. Powerful enough to line up and block a defensive end like Joey Bosa. Tough duty.
He made 8 catches last year, 1 for a touchdown for Ohio State. This to the end zone. The receiver is open, but the ball is dropped. Vanette again. Had a chance at that one in the back of the end zone.
See, Nick, what happens? I've been bragging on you. And you
Maybe the wind got a hold of it a little bit.
Urban will be telling him, Nick, you're better than that.
Ran a nice route, though.
There you go.
Good effort, though. Good effort at the back of the end zone by Vanette.
Yeah, he will be graded down on 4 to 6 A and B on that, just that didn't get the job done.
We got another 4th and goal for the Gray. Last time they gave it to Dunn, who powered it in. They were much closer than the first attempt. That was to the end zone and out of bounds. Michael Thomas was back there. Apple on the coverage.
You think about the wide receivers coming back for Ohio State, and I think of Devin Smith and some of the most spectacular plays the last couple of years in the Big Ten. I think of him making it. Unbelievable catches. Now, I guess what you add to that, you got to do it all the time. The consistency factor. Then he is a real good weapon. And another Stark County guy. He's out of Massillon High School, and he's a flyer.
Devin Smith had 44 catches last year and 8 touchdowns. Average 15 yards per catch. Michael Thomas, a sophomore from L.A., finds a seat on that bench with the Gray leading the Scarlet 10-7. Final minute of the second period. There's Devin Smith, number 9. 660 yards last year for Devin Smith in receiving yardage. Earl Bruce, look at the greats in the history of Ohio State, will join us at halftime. A very special guest. The ball bounces into the end zone. Play continues. And a completion at the 8-yard line. How about that one?
Well, you know, it worked out for a completion, but I promise you that Tom Herman, Urban Meyer, they're going to say, no. Don't take a bad play and make it worse. When he first caught that, he probably should have thrown it out of the end zone. Take the safety. We'll kick off and play again, because if you're running around right here, all of a sudden, watch right here. That could very easily be picked off. And if it's picked off, or they might say, you should have thrown it out of bounds. Yes. You got out there. If you can get away with it, throw it out of bounds, and we'll play again.
Jones' pass is complete. Torrey Smith has the catch.
Scrimmaging games, spring games, that's why you like to do them, because those situations present themselves. You don't normally set that up like that in practice. You have to deal with it in the game.
Cardell Jones, 6'5" and 250. From Cleveland, Ohio, back in the pocket again. It's out across the 20.
6'5", 250 pounds, and he's a young guy, redshirt freshman, and he's a quarterback.
Both of these quarterbacks have shown to be very nimble, throwing and running in the first half of the Scarlet and Gray spring game. With just 26 seconds to go in the second quarter. It's a 4th and 10. Now, I'm guessing normally in this situation, from your own 20, you're not really going for it. But they're thumbing through the playbook for this situation that they may need at some point during the season.
Now, you say that, but this gives you an example of what you can do in spring game. Urban Meyer might have stepped back. Hey, listen, we're down. We got 20 seconds left to go in the game. Exactly. We can't punt it. We need to get a first down. Don't throw it short. Don't throw it away. We got to get a first down or we lose the game.
Jones throws another pass complete to Mitchell. He's also from Cleveland, Ohio. you got 10 seconds to go, Coach, for the 42.
Yeah. I can't read Urban's mind. He might have told him, hey, listen, we got 10 seconds. What we want to do is we got to get the ball down the field. We need a chance at a field goal. Now, let's complete it. Let's go timeout. Let's bring that field goal.
He could always, if he wanted to, put a little more time on the clock, too. It's up to his discretion. He's already reversed the penalty today. So they're going for the long heave and well out of bounds. Clock still reads 3 seconds to go in the second quarter. Corey Smith, the intended receiver, number 84 for the Scarlet, trailing the Gray by 3. Fans have come out to see the 2014 edition of the Buckeyes, who ripped off 12 straight wins to start last year. That put the winning streak at 24 straight games, a school record.
I think the halftime race contestants have entered the stadium, too. That's going to be interesting.
We do have some festivities at halftime.
They got one guy, they say they clocked at 4-4.
Saw that.
You know where he's from? National Ohio.
There you go. Once again, down near the 20. Ball falls to the turf. Trying to connect with Smith again. Gary and Conley was back there defensively for Ohio State, and that is in fact going to be the final play of the first half. So we got to look at Barrett and Jones extensively in the first half. A couple of nice drives engineered by J.T. Barrett, leading the Gray team. Took them down to the 1, and they punched it in on the ground. Couldn't quite get it to the end zone in their second trip down into the red zone. Lisa?
Right now. You're going to show me your 40-yard dash, weren't you, just real quick? You said that you were going to throw the ball. Evaluate how your quarterbacks have done that here in this first half.
You know, we got some young offensive linemen there, too, and so we're getting pressured a little bit. They're doing okay, and you're never pleased, you know, until you start seeing that ball fly around a little bit. But one thing is, our pass defense is a lot better than what it's been.
Coach Basin was saying that your wife actually tweeted at Coach Herman and wanted to run the Shelley shuttle pass. Have we seen that yet, and will we see that?
She reminded me as well. We did run it down there, almost scored, so you're going to see it again in the second half.
Right, thank you. Tom?
Thank you, Lisa. So at halftime, it's the race. With some of the students, there's such great interaction between this program, Urban Meyer, and the student body and all the great supporters of Ohio State football. But look, take a look at the T-shirt. They even got T-shirts, Coach. Fastest student finalist. And they're going to run against a couple of guys in uniform in our game today.
Well, what's really impressive to me, yeah, it's a show there, but Coach Meyer kept his entire football team out here to watch him. You know, those students watch us play. That's what he's probably telling his players. We're going to watch them run.
You're talking about that time, 4-4-1. Malcolm Branson, who is part of this fastest student competition. He's down there as well. That's Malcolm right there in the middle of your screen. Yeah, there you go. Branson, there he is.
Well, I'll tell you,
they even get their names on the back.
He runs another 4-4. He'll be on this football team. And, you put a guy out of wide receiver can run 4-4. Someone's got to cover him now.
I'll tell you, he's got the game face on at halftime.
He's put together
to get some attention here. Dontre Wilson will be one of the players for Ohio State. You just saw him go right by your screen. We'll race some of the students. And again, last Saturday they had that student appreciation practice that we showed you prior to the game. Some of the students right down on the field, right around the drills, involved in the drills, kicking field goals, all that good stuff.
You know, our halftime guest is going to be Coach Earl Bruce, and Urban might have got this idea from Coach Bruce because when Coach was coaching, sometimes he'd line up and race our offensive linemen. He would challenge them. They'd all think, oh yeah, and he was a sprinter in his day. I'll tell you, very impressive.
So Coach Bruce, most of the time, was the winner in those races, correct?
I think maybe he raced Urban one time and beat him. That's how he got the idea.
He's up here in the booth with us, and he's laughing at that comment because he knows if he won or not, he was going to make the final decision as to who won that race. Okay, so the guys in the black T-shirts are students. And as you can see on the shirt, it is the fastest student race, and they're finalists.
Now, what do you think these students, these kids are thinking right now in front of all these people?
Well, I think they feel the stare and the glare from Coach Meyer. I mean, they're now on the field with one of the most successful coaches in the history of college football.
The real pressure is all their buddies from the dorm, you know, that all came out
they're here
to watch him play. And they've been talking, I'm telling you, that is real pressure.
Devontae Butler is out there, 17. Dontre Wilson is also out there. They're having fun with this. So there's Nurnberger again. Boy, he's getting a lot of airtime today. Kicking field goals, extra points, and he's going to be part of the race. There's his teammate, Dontre Wilson. Looking for some inspiration from this spring game crowd.
And all the land, you have Malcolm, Greenwood, Branson, followed by Colin, Muhammad, Fultz.
They're introducing these students now. I believe that guy's nickname was the Hobbit. He's not going to win. Not with that nickname. You got to have a better nickname than that. Maybe he will. I don't know. Anything can happen at the student race.
Show me the Carfax.
Did you hear that one?
Runners. Let's go, man. It's time to go.
It is Coach Meyer in the white. Right behind these young men. We're going to put their speed on display for the crowd. At the shoe. Students against student athletes.
Right there. Here we go. Runners. Behind the line. I'm going to say 1, 7.
Coach, you need to let them know if it's a false start, because we don't want to have any issues with this race. A good, clean race. Guys in the black T-shirts, the students. Oh. It's a clean start. Brenson in the middle. He may do it. Acceleration to the finish. He wants a uniform right now, Coach Mason.
Watch this. This is impressive. Look at all those black. They've got a fast student body here at The Ohio State University.
Great work.
Now he knows what he's doing. He accelerated, leaned into the tape. Branson knows what he's doing. Coach Meyer loves it.
It was a close call.
And so do we, for that matter. A race to the finish. The students and the student athletes here at Ohio Stadium. It's a spring game at OSU.
I assume you're in the middle.
And your winner of the fastest.
So that first race was a heat. And they ran again. Branson, the student. But it appears that the athletes on scholarship have prevailed. So Branson getting some congratulations from the Ohio State players. Here they go. All the way to the tape. So we'll have more from the spring game. Take a timeout at halftime. We'll come back with Earl Bruce, one of the greats in the history of Ohio State. He'll join us in the broadcast booth. Welcome back to Ohio Stadium. It is halftime of the spring game. Scarlet and gray. We had a little bit of fun with some races between students and student athletes just a moment ago. It is 10-7. The gray has the lead over the scarlet here at halftime. Up in the broadcast booth, we have a very special guest. It is Earl Bruce, coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes, late 70s and 80s. And I know Coach Mason and Coach Bruce have such a great relationship. Player to coach, coach to coach, as you were an assistant for Coach Bruce as well. But what do you think of everything that has gone on today and has built up to this point for Ohio State football and how great it has been over the last few years?
Oh, it's been great the last 2 years. It's been great for about 13 years here. Really tremendous with Coach Tressel and Coach Urban Meyer, and it's winning. But this is a typical spring game, isn't it? And when you talk about what a spring game's supposed to be, and it's just a matter of finishing spring practice and moving on to next year, but not getting any injuries and playing football as well as you can with two sides, and your big quarterback is out and you're developing quarterbacks. I mean, it's just a matter of what you're trying to get out of spring practice in this last day.
Coach, let's talk about Urban Meyer for a second. You know, the way I got it figured, you hired him as a graduate assistant here at Ohio State. You hired him as a full-time assistant at Colorado State. You used your influence at Bowling Green to get him the head coaching job there. So without you, he's not the head coach of Ohio State.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, I think I told him you have to take the Bowling Green job. You have to get a start. You have to get a record to move on. Well, he ultimately won 2 years at Bowling Green, moved to Utah, had a great 2 years there, and all of a sudden the Florida job comes open. They fire the coach at Florida. They fire the guy at Notre Dame to get him, and he ends up at Florida, wins 2 national championships, and here he is.
So let me ask you, as a young coach working for you, what did you see in Urban Meyer that doesn't surprise you, the success that he had as a head coach?
Oh, he was a marvelous coach. He's a marvelous recruiter. He's very well organized in recruiting. He really helped our players grow when he came. In the first year, we were 9-3 with him, and the receivers looked good. He was recruiting. I could see that he could take charge of the offense, but we had an offensive coordinator that I really loved, so there was no chance of him getting a coordinatorship. But he is a great mind in football, and he's quick to respond to adversity, and he's quick to respond to good players that need help. And you got to get players eligible to play, and I gave him the job when he first came there to get our wide receiver. He was a wide receiver coach. Save him at all costs, and don't for goodness sake lose that kid at all. And he had a lot of problems. He solved the problems. He got them ready, and we won with him too. And he just continued to be a great coach. That's all.
Coach, when we talk about Ohio State, we talk about so many of the traditions that they have here. You know, you think about the senior tackle, you think about the gold pants, you think about the Buckeye Grove, you think about the Victory Bell. Former player, coach, no one loves Ohio State more than you. What one tradition do you like the most?
Well, I think I like about 2 of them. I like the guys that make the All-American, they have a tree, a Buckeye tree. I think that's great, especially when you go over and walk through that. You see a lot of old players, and you reminisce about the great days and do a lot of things. I do love the gold pants. I think that's indication of real success at Ohio State. When you beat Michigan, that's the ultimate. That is the game and the one you want to win. And if you lose it, it's pretty tough. So,
is Michigan the team up north?
Well, I call it Michigan. I've always called it Michigan in honor of the coach I coached against. I want to tell you, there's no Bo Schembechlers in the world. You understand? There's only one, and he was top drawer for Michigan, and he proved that in 1969 at a really tough game when we had a really great football team, and he took it away from us and moved on and really did a great job at Michigan. So I don't mind calling it Michigan. The team up north is okay. That belonged to Woody Hayes and now Urban Meyer.
Well,
for Earl
Coach,
Bruce, they're Michigan.
Well, Coach, let me tell you, there was only one Bo Schembecker. There was only one Earl Bruce.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Coach, thank you so much for your time. By the way, Ohio State's won 2 in a row and 9 of the last 10 in that great series with Michigan. Game number 111 coming up this season. We've got more to come from the Scarlet and Gray game after this. At halftime at the Shoe and the Gray leading the Scarlet 10-7, the 2014 spring game for the Buckeyes. Take a look at some of the highlights. In the first quarter, Frazier came in, made the play, and that resulted in a touchdown for the Scarlet.
Well, you heard Urban Meyer say that they've got some young offensive linemen there. That's a big concern for spring practice going to next year. These guys are going to have to step it up.
The kickers get into the act as well. They had a chance to kick some field goals. Nurnberger and Clinton. And in the second quarter, this is straight ahead running. And a touchdown for the Gray. Ryante Dunn took it in for the score. Put the quarterbacks side by side, J.T. Barrett and Cardale Jones.
Well, J.T. Barrett's got a lot more work, and Cardale Jones has established him as the backup quarterback. And, you know, I just think it might be, you look at the difference in throwing the ball. They're not throwing the ball more because they think Barrett's a better passer. I think that Jones is with what would be the first team. They're running their offense.
Jones, a sophomore, and Barrett, a redshirt freshman. And Barrett led them on a couple of drives, not only the scoring drive where Dunn took it in, but they got inside the 5 as well, just couldn't connect with the TD pass in the end zone on a couple of occasions. So he's done pretty well today. We're going to see more of those two quarterbacks and more of all the players involved in our Scarlet and Gray game, and the interaction between the crowd that has turned out to watch this game and celebrate Ohio State football. You know, it is a big year in the history of Ohio State football. This is year number 125. Tom Wormy, Glenn Mason, you are part of the history. This must just be a great day to watch Urban Meyer tweak things here and there, throw the ball a little bit more, maybe see what he's got as we lead up to that game in late August to start the season against Navy.
Well, yeah, I went to Ohio State, and I coached at Ohio State, but I feel so fortunate to be part of the Big Ten Conference. You know, in our job, I get to travel around. I see a lot of different programs. Be around these great coaches, these student athletes, something special.
It really is, and it's been a special day so far, and it's going to get a lot better right now because Lisa Byington is standing by with Carlos Hyde.
Yeah, Carlos, first of all, tell me, you said you've been busy and jumping from place to place, NFL team to NFL team. What has surprised you most right now about this process of trying to get drafted?
That it's real long. Yeah, seriously though, it's a long process. You know, it's like I'm at the point where it's like, all right, I'm ready for the draft to start, ready to get back to playing football. So it's just a long process.
Well, you're back now to watch this. You said you haven't had a lot of time to be around the spring practices, but if you were to give advice to the guys who are trying to replace you, what would it be for next year?
Just learn the playbook. If you already know the playbook, play fast. You know, feel comfortable back there in the backfield and just play fast, have fun.
Looking back at your career, what was the turning point for you? What clicked and when?
The turning point was just another year with Coach Dre. You know, Coach Dre pushing me to another level that I didn't know that I had, and just being comfortable in the offense, and like I said, being able to play fast.
Surely was a different guy from start to finish there, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa, thank you. Carlos Hyde running for over 100 yards in both the bowl game, the Orange Bowl against Clemson, and the Big Ten championship game against Michigan State as well, where he ran for 118 yards in that game. November 16th at Illinois, he ran for 246 yards, a career high in a 60-35 win as Coach Meyer leads him back out onto the field here at the Horseshoe. This is the non-conference schedule. Navy leads it off August 30th. They're 4-0 all-time against Navy. Then the first ever meeting with Virginia Tech out of the ACC, Coach.
Well, you know, Virginia Tech can be a very dangerous team. We've seen that over the year. Let's not bypass Navy. When you play a team like them with that specialty offense, triple option offense, it's tough, but I'm sure that they're going to get ready for that, and they've got to circle that Virginia Tech game. Then you play Kent State, who's had their ups and downs, but anytime you play a mid-American school, there's good football players in that conference.
Kent State, they're 2-0 all-time against Kent State, and against Cincinnati, they haven't played them since 06, but are 13-2 all-time as a program. And you move to that conference schedule. Lead it off with a new entry into the Big Ten. Maryland for the ACC. You got to travel to College Park, get the week off, and then you take the other team that's come into the league as well. And Rutgers, you got them home here at the Shoe on October 18th.
Well, that's a good home opener for Ohio State, and it's a tough opener for Rutgers, you know, let's face it. And then you get going, and you see it right there. Then you got to go on the road against Penn State with a new football coach. And they don't know what James Franklin's going to do. And then you got Illinois at home, and then you really got two rough road games there at Michigan State, at Minnesota. And Jerry Kill's got that program going a lot better. They got the running attack going. And then you got Indiana, and then you know what you finish up with. You finish up, as they say, the team up north.
That's right. Ohio State has beaten Indiana 19 times in a row. Beaten Michigan twice. They had an epic game last year, 42-41 on November 30th. And you saw some of the teams that they will not play at the bottom of that graphic, including Wisconsin and Nebraska, during the course of the conference schedule for Ohio State.
Let me tell you about that Indiana game, though. You know, Kevin Wilson down there, they can move the ball. They can score on anybody. Defense has been a big problem. If they play good defense or better defense than they're playing, watch out. Let's not forget, they beat Penn State by 20 a year ago because they played good defense that one game.
Ohio State beating Indiana on November 23rd this past season, 42-14. Braxton Miller rushed for 144 yards and 2 TDs in that winning effort as we crank up the second half of the spring game from the Shoe. Going on the run and incomplete. We've seen a lot of deep balls in this game. Cardell Jones hasn't been as successful as J.T. Barrett has, numbers-wise, but still getting the reps.
Well, it goes back again when you start talking about we've seen a lot of deep balls. That's really a product of what kind of defense you're playing, because by and large they're playing press coverage. So where do you go? Slant's not there, out's not there. You got to throw deep. We got to throw crossing routes.
Samuel on the carry.
So we've got the attendance figure for the Scarlet and Gray game. 61,058.
Let's go talk about that defense again. You know, the first thing that Lisa Byington asked Chris Ash was, well, what did you change? He says, you know, we got to change the swagger, the attitude, the confidence. So much to play in defense, Tom, is confidence. You know, I know what they're talking about. The thing about offensively, you dictate where the ball's going. Defense, it's dictated to you. And you have to have a different mentality, and that's what you're trying to get back.
What was your approach as far as that was concerned in your 10 years at Minnesota and prior to that as well?
Well, it's exactly that. You know, the problem is that you can't hide on defense. What I'm saying, on offense, you know where your strengths or weaknesses are. You play to your strengths. On defense, the other guy knows where your weakness is, so you better be pretty darn good against Roy.
Total defense in this Ohio State program last year, they were 7th in the conference, allowing 377 yards per game. Mitchell makes the catch on that play, a well-thrown ball.
Case in point, you look at a year ago, Ohio State was really good versus the run, not versus the pass. So what everybody do, they pass the ball on them.
So the Scarlet starting to move it. This is to the end zone, but
watching both these young quarterbacks, Cardell Jones, J.T. Barrett, they've left a lot to be desired in their performance, but watching them, they don't seem rattled. They seem poised. They seem confident in what they're doing. And because Braxton Miller isn't practicing, down the road it's really because they've been taking all the snaps.
Braxton Miller has the headset and the camera on. If you were with us in the first half, Lisa had a great interview with Braxton Miller. He is wearing that apparatus He is trying to identify and expand upon the offensive sets and recognitions, progressions, etc. But it's all being recorded by that little camera on his headset. So the coaches want to keep him involved in this spring game, despite the fact that he cannot play, recovering from that shoulder surgery.
Well, you see that play, the quarterbacks are in black jerseys and they're not to be hit, and that's why you see when they're going to run the ball, the defense just pulls on off.
Jones has the time. Leap at the 5 and now down to about the 2 or 3. Corey Smith, 84 for the Scarlet. Threatening. First and goal. Pass on the run. Side slinger and out. The 1 yard line. Cato Mitchell on the grab. Great defensive play and read well.
Well, Urban said there wouldn't be much blitzing, but all of a sudden there, you know, those co-defensive coordinators, they had enough of that stuff. They brought somebody, didn't pick it up, tackle for loss.
Ron Tanner made the play. Now, I don't know whether he changed jerseys, but originally he was on the Scarlet roster.
Yeah, well, that happens.
And now,
you're short in numbers. And
I'm looking for 20 on the gray roster, and it's not there. So it's Tanner now on the gray team, wearing the white jersey. May have had the Scarlet on in the first half. 4th and goal all of a sudden, Coach Mason.
Ron Tanner, nice play. He's at Eastmore High School. Same high school that Archie Griffin went to.
3rd season here in Columbus for Urban Meyer. Technically has not lost a conference game. They've gone through the schedule 8-0 on both occasions. Did meet up with Michigan State.
You talk about Archie Griffin, not a better football player or a better person you'll ever meet.
Not gonna make it. We get a defensive stand from the gray.
Now, you just heard them call Lewis's name. Now, watching yesterday him walk through the locker room, that's what you want a defensive end to look like.
All right, we'll continue with the spring game from Columbus, Ohio, right after this. Gray lead Scarlet, 10-7. 4.5 to go in the 3rd quarter. Braxton Miller will be ready to lead this team once the season rolls around, not participating in our spring game, but listed on our Heisman hopefuls. And Jameis Winston, who won the award last year, he won the big trophy too in that national championship game against Auburn. Marcus Mariota from Oregon, Bryce Petty from Baylor, also on our Heisman hopeful list.
Well, he ought to be. I can tell you that. The thing about it is I looked at what he's accomplished. I thought 2 years ago, you talk about Heisman trophies, I thought he was discriminated against to a certain extent because of some of the sanctions that they had. And then a year ago, you look at the numbers that he put up. If he wasn't injured early, wow, it might have really been spectacular.
He had a great game against Michigan. He threw for 133 yards, but ran for 153 and 3 touchdowns. A couple of TD passes in that game against Michigan as well. Last 2 years, the offensive player of the year in the conference. All the skills thrown on the run. Get into the house at the big house.
What makes him so dangerous, he's awful talented, but he's got the ability to take a bad play and turn it into a big play. And defensively, that just drives any defense crazy.
You know, in the first quarter of that game against Michigan, Braxton Miller, he had a 53-yard TD pass to Devin Smith, and he also had a 53-yard rushing touchdown. All in the first quarter, and ultimately a 42-41 win in the 110th meeting between Ohio State and Michigan last November 30th.
Well, you talk about all the great players. Needless to say, he's another one that played in this great stadium. But you look just to our north, and look at those names up there. Bill Willis, Chick Harley, Archie Griffin, Hopalong Cassidy, Vic Janowitz, Eddie George, Les Horvath. I mean, you're talking about a long period of time in between those guys, and they were all great players.
Got some Heisman trophies attached to those names as well. 7 in total and 2 from Archie Griffin in Ohio State history.
Interesting thing I'd like to touch on again. You know, Urban is not calling his coaches position coaches anymore. They're unit leaders. And he's taken a whole different approach as far as accountability from each member of that unit, including the head coach. And I'm not just talking about football. I'm talking about football, academics, weightlifting, conduct off the field. And I'm going to tell you, the standards are high. I sat in the team meeting. He was very gracious to let me do that. And, Tom, I could not have been more impressed. Here's the day before the spring game, and the things that Urban Meyer went over in detail really had very little to do with X's and O's in football. It was making these guys, and his demands are great, but none of his demands aren't geared to make those guys better people.
Scarlett will get the ball, trailing by 3. Last couple of minutes to go in the third period. And let's go down to Lisa.
Well, Coach, just getting a coach's perspective there from the line of scrimmage. Where do your eyes tend to fall when you're watching back there?
Last year it was in the backfield because I had such confidence in our offensive line. Here I'm just kind of, we have our right guard right now is a kid that should be getting ready for a senior prom. So, and it looks like it. So, that's where my eyes are right now, just watching the line of scrimmage because we have such transition in our offensive line right now.
What is the key to getting a new offensive line to gel? Is there a key? I mean, is there a magic formula?
Of course there's a key, but it's, it's not in like page 346 where it depends on what your clientele is, what your guys are. The best thing about it happened here is they saw probably the best O-line in America, so they can learn from them. And then certainly we're not there. There's a lot of potential. We have 3 kids coming in June that are going to have to be in the depth.
I want you to talk us through this play and what you're seeing with your eyes here.
Okay, this is 853 Z cross. You see Devin Smith come across the field, double post on the outside. Look deep. Oh, that's a true freshman right there. So we're having a hard time getting a pass off right now.
But it's a young team. Those are some of the struggles that you see here this spring.
Any spring game. And that's why I want to make sure the fans come out here, have a little fun, enjoy themselves, tailgate. It's certainly not quality football at times.
Let me ask you just briefly. Actually, let's go through this play.
Okay, this is going to be that's a power play to the right where you have a read by the quarterback. And the quarterback pulled it because the end came up the field.
The biggest thing.
That was the play that Braxton and Carlos, that was our play last year.
Yeah. I saw Kenny Guyton even here on the sideline, and obviously the backup quarterback's so important. What happened to you guys last year? What have you told these 2 backup guys in the role that they could have coming up next year?
Well, the greatest teaching is lesson learned from the guy in front of you. And one of the greatest lessons learned is Kenny Guyton's one of the greatest backup players I've ever seen in my life. He was always engaged. He worked extremely hard.
That's better, Coach.
That's much better. He sat in the pocket. But that's all. You look at that. Why was that a good play? Because our offensive line protected the quarterback.
With Braxton's been standing next to you here the whole afternoon, what have you seen from him and just in terms of the mental part of the game and what he has learned not being able to participate here this spring?
That's a great question. We've been doing a lot of the John Gruden camp with him. We're trying to have him just study the game more and to be able to articulate to the players, because if he ever has any dream of what he does or playing the NFL, it's so much more than running fast, jumping high. It's to play quarterback. I mean, you have to be able to have complete understanding of everyone's position, knowledge of the game, and that's what we've been really working with him.
All right, the quarter's almost over. We appreciate the time. We'll visit with you shortly.
Thank you, Lisa. Some insight into the spring game from the head coach himself, Urban Meyer.
I was hoping he was going to put Lisa in there to run a play.
It's like, Coach Mason, what do you think about what we've done so far? This is probably going to be the final play. Samuel put on the brakes and dove inside the 5 for the Scarlet, but that's going to do it in the 3rd. Now, Coach might want to run another play here.
You mentioned Curtis Samuel, and as I was walking around before the start of the guy in the press box, number of the local media were telling me, check Samuel out, watch Samuel.
And we've seen him and his teammates working hard out there in the spring game, and that is, in fact, the end of the quarter. Oh, some acrobatics, too. We're coming back to the shoot. Welcome back. We're ready to start the 4th quarter. It's the Gray leading the Scarlet 10-7, but we have a special guest up in the broadcast booth, Tom Dienhart, the senior writer for BTN.com. And Tom, we've seen 3 quarters of this Ohio State team so far. We've seen them throw the ball quite a bit. A deviation from last year's game plan, certainly. What are your impressions so far?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I talked to Mace before the game. He heard they were going to throw the ball a lot today, and that has been the case, obviously. You know, they want to work on the passing game. They want to see what these other quarterbacks can do with Braxton Miller out. We've seen some of the running backs, Ezekiel Elliott, Warren Ball, Deontay Dunn, trying to find a replacement for Carlos Hyde. So, again, the offense has had a chance to work on a few different things today.
Well, here it is. It's the spring game in Columbus. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I didn't get to see a lot of other teams. I know you make the rounds. When you look at the new East Division, new West Division, who are your choices, your preseason choices to win those divisions?
Well, you got to like Ohio State. You know, they were 24-0. They're on a 2-game losing streak right now, of course. But again, what Meyer's got coming back, we talked about what he's done with his staff here earlier. I heard you talking about that. If they get the issues settled in the secondary, that was a pass defense that was 11th in the Big Ten last year. If they get the offensive line rehab, of course, 4 new starters, they're going to be right there, I think, in that East with Michigan State. And of course, on the West, I think it's a little bit more intriguing. I'm leaning toward Nebraska at this point. I like Bo Pelini's defense. I think Tommy Armstrong will be the solution at quarterback. He showed some skills last year, so I like Nebraska over there in the West. Well, they'll keep your eye on Iowa. Keep your eye on, I think, even the Minnesota Gophers, to a degree, I think have a chance to compete.
Well, you know, you look at this defense like you talk about, and Urban Meyer talks about he's going to overhaul the defense. That's what he's attempting to do. What do you think a guy like Chris Ash and Larry Johnson brings to this program?
Well, I tell you what, Larry Johnson was at Penn State for 18 years and developed a lot of great defensive linemen. He's a tremendous recruiter, but again, you look at the resume, you look at the guys who sent to the NFL, it's awfully impressive. And that's going to be the strong point of this Ohio State team this year is the defensive line. So he brings a lot of off-field knowledge and a great recruiting acumen to the Buckeyes. And then, you know, you talked about Chris Ash. He's got the coordinator experience at Wisconsin and at Arkansas, but what he brings is also the skill of coaching the defensive backfield. And again, when we started this, I talked about the need for Ohio State to recruit its secondary. And again, Ash's knowledge coaching defensive backs, I think is really going to help this defense get better.
When you think of Ohio State, we kept flashing the schedule up. We started with their non-conference schedule, Navy, which is a tough opponent when you haven't played somebody like that, and then playing a really potentially dangerous team in Virginia Tech, opening the Big Ten season with Rutgers. How do you think the schedule matches up for Ohio State?
I think it's very, very favorable. I tell you what, I was looking at that earlier in the first half. They got 2 byes before November as well. You talked about opening in Baltimore against Navy. I kept running my finger down the schedule looking for that first loss of the year, and I think there's a great chance they could be unbeaten going to Michigan State on November 8th.
Well, you look at it right there. I mean, you're right. This team, they lost a lot of good players. I keep saying, but they got a lot of talent back. And I look at that defensive line. You know, there for years, people would say the difference between the Big Ten and the Southeast Conference is the defensive line. I look at the defensive line that they have here, not just the 4 guys that they have, but the great depth that they have. Is there a better defensive line in the country than those guys?
It's going to be hard-pressed to find any group better than what Larry Johnson and Urban Meyer have here in Columbus. Joey Bosa, course, a freshman All-American last year, Adolphus Washington, Noah Spence, Michael Bennett. I mean, and Coach Mason, you talked about beyond those guys, the depth, and then that's really what separates Ohio State. It's not just the great front four that starts, but the guys behind them are excellent as well. And, you know, it's just within the Big Ten, people get on me because I'm already on the Ohio State defensive line bandwagon, but they say keep an eye on Michigan State's defensive line, which could be good as well, and keep your eye on Nebraska's defensive line. Their entire front seven in Nebraska is going to be better, but those are going to be the three best defensive lines in the league, and I think Ohio State's will be the best.
Well, Tom, you know, how guys look don't always tell the whole story, but I was in their practice facility yesterday, and when that door opened to the defensive locker room and those guys kept pouring out of that defensive line meeting room with Larry Johnson, I was drooling. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, those are the guys you want getting off the bus first. They passed the proverbial eyeball test. They look like big-time defensive linemen, and we see them playing like big-time defensive linemen today. So, again, it seems like every team, or most every team, can always cobble together a good offense. We see Purdue, Indiana, you know, Minnesota, they can get good offenses, but really what separates, it seems like the teams that are consistently great in the Big Ten, which the ones that kind of struggle and come and go, it's always on defense, and it's usually on the defensive line. You know, I've talked to a lot of coaches over the years, and they say that's the hardest spot to recruit, is to get good defensive linemen, guys who aren't just big, but also guys who are big and can move both.
Well, you look at the depth they have in the defensive line here at Ohio State. Let's not forget they took two guys that had figured in to play defensive line. They moved to the offensive line because they need help. Not many places do you see that happen. Yeah, and right off the bat today, we saw a reserve defensive end, Rashard Frazier, get 2 sacks right away, and he's not even a starter. And the one was a sack, fumble, recover for a touchdown. So, again, he's a fifth-year senior. Then he figures in the rotation, but he's not among the first teamers. Well, that's the good news. The bad news that Urban Meyer would tell you is he's going against the left tackle that we need to help us, and he's not getting it done right now. That's true. And again, the offensive line, you talked before the game, Coach Mason. One starter back. You know, Taylor Decker was the question last year. Now he's the linchpin. He's been moved from right tackle to left tackle. 4 new starters along the front. I think Ed Warner, the offensive line coach, will get it done. He had a big job on his plate when he got to Columbus in 2012. He made that line great, and I think in time, this Ohio State line will be very good, too. You know, I agree with you, but it might be a little bit better. You look at Antonio Underwood. He was a guy that figured to play last year, missed all last year with an injury, and now he's back. You look at the center position. Zach Bourne's played a little bit, you know what I mean? And you've got Billy Price, who we've talked about. They're high on him. F-line, he's figured in. He's played. So as time goes on, I think they're not going to be near as good as they were last year, but I think they'll be pretty good. They'll be good, and back to the defense, the linebackers. I saw Lisa talking to Ryan Shazier. Of course, he leaves early, leads the team in tackles the last 2 years, leaves a big void. And, you know, Coach Mason, we talked about the linebackers before the game as well, and some good, exciting young linebackers. I was looking at the stats for halftime, some of the guys that you were told to watch, Worley in particular, and the Darren Lee kid were leading both their squads in tackles. So those are a couple of young linebackers, in addition to that true freshman kid, McMillan, who are going to have to step up this year at that spot. Well, the linebacker position is so much more difficult to play now because the variety of offense that you see with all the spreads, you need really good athletes out there that can make the adjustments to all the sets and cover down, especially against empty sets. They got to cover that third receiver out there, and at the same time, in a tight set, they find themselves having to take on a 320-pound offensive tackle. Tough duty. Yeah, you got to be in there for 3rd and 12 and have the same skills to be in there for 4th and 1. I mean, it's hard to find guys who are athletic enough to keep out there on passing downs, but also to be tough enough and big enough to stay in there on the running downs. But again, you know, Meyer and company and the way they recruit has allowed them to stockpile a lot of talent on that side of the ball. We talked about a lot about this, but one of the things I want to see who the backup quarterback would be, because how Kenny Guyton had to play such a prominent role. And you think about Braxton Miller, as much as he run in the past, he's got dinged up here and there. Would you be concerned so far what you've seen out of the backup quarterbacks? I don't think so. I reference your comments about the offensive line they're working behind. They're still works in progress, and I think maybe that's part of the issue today. But again, I think the Jones kid will probably end up being the backup. And when you talked about what Guyton meant to this team the last 2 years, not just on the field, but as a leader for a guy who's a backup, that's a heck of an intangible to lose from a player.
JT Barrett just led him on a scoring drive for the Gray as Warren Ball took it in for the touchdown for the Gray. So we were chatting away. JT Barrett was orchestrating the drive to the end zone. And a nice drive for the Gray. Extra point is good, 17-7. With about 4.5 minutes to go in our game. They're going to work on some extra points. And our United States Marine Corps leader of the day is Bryante Dunn. 6 carries, 35 yards. He had the first touchdown of the game. Took it in from about a yard out. So again, he's our leader of the day. United States Marine Corps leader of the day, Bryante Dunn, number 25 for the Gray team, which has taken a 10-point lead. Coach Urban Meyer enjoying the day. You know, one of the things he mentioned when Lisa was talking to him was about letting the fans get a nice experience here in spring ball, being able to tailgate, come out and see the team. And that's great that he puts that as a very important priority as far as the overall look of this Ohio State program, involving that fan base and the students. And as we've seen evidence of that throughout the afternoon.
Yeah, I tell you what, one of the most exciting moments of the day was at halftime, obviously, with the foot
like the race?
So when I heard about that, I was excited. So it's neat because, you know, 80,000, 100,000 fans is really what it's all about. To keep them involved and engaged is great.
Yeah, it was Doran Grant who represented the student athletes. He had his white jersey on, number 12. He did a flip at the end after he beat out one of the students, Branson, I think his name was. It was very quick and speedy down the middle. There was a heat to start, and then those two raced. And I think Doran Grant ruled himself the winner.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, from my perspective, I think it's great. There's so much talk now as well about unionization. Are they really student athletes? And you know, I've always really felt that athletes are just an extension of the student body, and we lose sight of that. And the things that Urban has done here, the Quick Cows, the Student Appreciation Day, bringing those kids out there, I really think that the students see that. The regular students see the student athlete, hey, they're just like us, and the student athlete saying, we're just students, that's all we are. I think it's great.
Exactly right, because sometimes I think as a student, I remember you almost felt a disconnect with the athletes. I feel on a whole other plane, but again, to be able to connect with those students, to make them feel like, hey, we're one and the same. We're just like you guys, and they really appreciate the support. And again, they generally show it a lot of these games here every day.
Well, it's a visible thing. You know, there is no athletic dorm, so I think what the general public don't realize is that these players, they live in the dorm with all the other students, and you know, the other students, they see those guys as just guys. They don't see them as football players. It's Jimmy down the hall, it's Bobby down the hall, and we sit and we have dinner with them other than when they're eating training table, and I think it's very positive.
You know, you have to think, though, that Coach Meyer is making it very easy for the students to be fans of this program, winning his first 24 games, getting them to the Big Ten Championship a season ago, and ultimately to the Orange Bowl, Tom?
Yeah, I tell you what, winning cures a lot of problems and makes a lot of friends and a lot of fans, doesn't it? So 24-0, I mean, that's a heck of a bar to set. Of course, they've lost their last 2 games. They're on a 2-game losing streak. Losing to Michigan State, losing to Clemson. So that's going to give, I think, Meyer and his staff a lot of motivation going into this offseason.
Yeah, well, they'll get it started against Navy in Baltimore, as you mentioned, August 30th to kick off the season. Tom, thank you for your insights, and we appreciate your work at BTN.com as a senior writer.
Good job.
That is Tom Dienhart with his impressions of the Ohio State spring game, the game in which the Gray lead 17-7, scoring recently on a touchdown run. And we've got Stephen Collier, the freshman, in at quarterback, with 13 for the Scarlet from Leesburg, Georgia. Once again, we thank Tom Dienhart for stopping by the broadcast booth. Does such excellent work in breaking down the Big Ten Conference. BTN.com and here on the Big Ten Network this afternoon with us. Once again, this is just the first of 3 spring games for today. We started it in the bright sunshine of Ohio Stadium. Coming up at 4 o'clock, it is Wisconsin, followed at 6 by Penn State, and Nebraska at 8 o'clock, all times Eastern. Wisconsin, Penn State, and Nebraska to follow the Ohio State spring game from Ohio Stadium. Tom makes a good point. That game to start the season, Coach, on August 30th against Navy, neutral site in Baltimore at M&T Bank Stadium. They have not met since 2001, those two programs, Navy and Ohio State.
Well, wherever Navy plays, they draw a crowd, and there's a lot of Ohio State alumni that live on the East Coast, so I think that'll be a tough ticket to get.
Yeah, technically a neutral site, but when you're in Baltimore, Maryland, you're in Navy country, nearby Annapolis, Maryland. So that'll be a great way to kick off the season for Ohio State. We've just got over 2 minutes remaining in our spring game for 2014. Had over 60,000 fans turn out. We started with a lacrosse match between Michigan and Ohio State, won by the Buckeyes. That's a budding rivalry in the new league that will start next year in the Big Ten, the new lacrosse league. But the rest of the afternoon belongs to the Scarlet and Gray in the 2014 edition of Ohio State. Samuel trying to spin away from a tackle.
Tom, you mentioned lacrosse. I sat here. I thoroughly enjoyed that game today. You talk about a fast-moving action game, and I don't really understand all the... I tried to pick up and learn as we went, but I was really impressed. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, you can learn from Greg Bice, who joined me on the broadcast earlier today on the Big Ten Network, the two-time All-American here at Ohio State, and a big football fan as well, and a fan of that guy, Urban Meyer. So much anticipation for this season. I think Tom Dienhart jokingly said they're on a 2-game losing streak. That was in the Big Ten championship game and the Orange Bowl as well, but both of those games were spectacular.
I was going to say, Tom, you really had to say that?
Yeah. Don't bring us down on Scarlet and Gray spring game day. But that is the reality. After winning 24 in a row. Here, grab on the sidelines by Corey Smith. So, final minute of play, Coach Mason. I guess I want to get your overall evaluations as to what you've seen from the Scarlet and Gray and Coach Meyer today.
Okay, some of the things that I talked about, the offensive line, they've got a lot of work to do. They've got some talent there, but I think they'll work it out. I'm still concerned about the backup quarterback. I mean, to think that all of a sudden, with the high expectation here, let's say against Virginia Tech and Braxton Miller goes out in the first quarter, are one of these guys ready to go to lead them victory? I'm not sure yet. Impressed with the defense. I've been watching the secondary. It is an overhaul. It's a different offense, different type of defense to attack offenses, and the press corners are going to be a big difference.
To your point, the backup quarterbacks in actual gameplay combined for 2 passing attempts and 1 completion, and they both belong to Cardale Jones. So we'll see how that situation develops as we got to look at J.T. Barrett and Cardale Jones during the afternoon with 41 seconds to go in the spring game and a 4th down situation.
Not many teams, programs had the luxury that Ohio State had the last couple years with Kenny Guyton. A guy from a coach, when you went to bed at night, you could sleep well because you know if you had to go to him, he was there. He was a great leader. He knew what he was doing. He could perform under pressure. Some guys make plays, some guys don't. That guy makes plays.
Kenny Guyton, who threw 14 touchdown passes last year. Braxton Miller threw 24. 38 TD passes combined was a school record a season ago for Guyton and Miller. Just want to thank everybody for being involved in the broadcast. Head coach Urban Meyer, Braxton Miller on the sidelines, Coach Earl Bruce, who joined us up in the broadcast booth, Tom Dienhart, who stopped by.
I want to personally thank everybody at Ohio State, starting with Urban Meyer. He couldn't have been more gracious the last 2 days, giving us access to his program.
You got quite the behind-the-scenes tour.
And so did everybody else. By him letting us film back there, people that have never seen that type. That's where the grind. He talks about the grind. That's where it takes place. Jerry Emick, Sports Information. He's great. I mean, everything was great. The only problem is it's coming to an end. You know, and then we got to wait until August, the end of August, to see football again.
To the end zone. One last try by Cardale Jones. And the Gray can celebrate a win over the Scarlets, 17-7. But everybody wins today here at Ohio State. Some people get wet, too. How about that? In the spring game, Coach?
You got to practice everything, Tom. Come on now.
It's a nice moment. So 17-7. the final. Coach Combs getting a little wet and a big smile too. Lisa?
Well, Coach, spring season now officially done. What impressions do you leave about this team going into the fall?
Oh, very excited. There's a bunch of young players. Got a long way to go. I love coaching this team, though. They're a bunch of good players that we just got to get them some experience. It's an interesting new rule this year. We're going to be able to spend 2 hours per week with them in the off season. And that's new. That's never been done before. And so that's going to really help us this year.
It's like a coach's dream. What identity does this team have? Does it have one yet?
No, it doesn't have one yet. I think on defense we're creating one, and we have to have one. Championships are won on defense, and we failed in that area last year. So identity is going to be much faster, much more aggressive on defense, and then we have to be able to throw the ball better this year.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Lisa, thank you, and thanks to Coach Urban Meyer for giving us complete access to his program and all the events of the spring game here at Ohio State. As the players form the ranks arm in arm. Quite a day. Perfect weather. Some great football action. Got a little bit of an insight into what the Buckeyes will put on the field this year. Again, August 30th. Navy in Baltimore, Maryland. They start the conference schedule with a couple of first-time meetings with new members, Maryland and Rutgers right here at Ohio State. Don't forget, more spring games on BTN today. Wisconsin at 4 o'clock, Penn State's at 6, and then Nebraska at 8 o'clock tonight. So, Coach, quite a day here at Ohio State, a celebration of Buckeye football. You being part of that fabric over the years.
Well, yeah, I've got some memories, but I used to have to play these guys all the time, too. And, you know, one thing about this type of venue right here, the Horseshoe, it was always exciting to come in here and play because this is what college football is all about. And, you know, we had an opportunity to win here one time, which was a great memory for me, but it was still always a great experience to come in here, play the Ohio State Buckeyes with all the great tradition. And, you know, it'll be interesting what happens this year. They're going to be a good football team, and they solve some problems. They're going to be a real good football team.
Hey, don't forget the Wisconsin spring game coming up at 4 from Madison. It's been an exclusive presentation of the Big Ten Network. For Glenn Mason and Lisa Byington, I'm Tom Wormy saying so long from Columbus, Ohio.